Hey everyone, we're back here today with TED Talks, Ruby Rocks, and I'm hoping today we can tell a story that might just actually rock your world. And speaking of rocks, we're talking about minerals and how they are directly related to our internet. So I know we talk about the internet, but we're talking about the internet. And what we're doing with that today is 5% of minerals control 95% of our bodily function. So those little 5%, if we're not getting enough of them, then 95% of our bodily function is sad and lonely and maybe really sluggish. And it's those times where you're trying to get that internet and you're like, come on, I need faster, I need faster. So our internet needs that as well. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what those minerals are and those kinds of things. So we have the three main nervous systems. Our autonomic, which is, thank God we have that, because we wake up and, we wake up and we breathe on our own and we function on our own and we ingest and breathe and respire and the whole thing without us telling ourselves that we have to do that. So showing how a lot of things that I don't get done is because it involves me telling myself that I need to do that. So our autonomic is calcium, magnesium, copper, zinc, manganese, and those minerals are more abundant. We hear about those a lot more, and those are for our bone building, our blood, and the cell structure. So that one is 1/3 of a system of three. The second of that is the parasympathetic, sympathetic, and that is like reflective minerals. So we're looking at the chromium, which actually heats up, silver and nickel. So those are the shiny metals and the minerals that we also hear too. But they are actually involved in that second of three, the sympathetic nervous system. Then the third one we have is the parasympathetic nervous system, and a lot of times that is kind of shut off. Like that doesn't seem to work very well. That's when we're trying to rest, and a lot of times we have to get therapy for that because it's more of a little bit of a harder one to get going. And those are trace minerals. Those are vanadium, gold, and titanium. And they actually are involved in the vagus nerve. So we have all those like 72,000 wires that go from our brain to our spinal cord, and then it goes down to our spinal cord. I just had another conversation about the vagus nerve today. That comes up a lot. Like when doing hairdressing and I would wash the hair, I would massage around the ear area, and that helps stimulate the vagus nerve. And there's something things that we can do with that on our own. So that we actually talk about that. They kind of call that like God's antenna, and that's kind of interesting because it's our connection. So what we need to do is we need to eat properly and drink properly. And those, I haven't spoken about this in this series of videos yet, but I do advocate water that is filtered in such a way that doesn't have the minerals removed. Just going back to when we had that when the kids were little, thinking at the time that the reverse osmosis was a good choice for us, but they were like, yeah, you're fine with that as long as you replace those minerals. And that for me is like, oh yeah, that's going to be a problem, because now it's up to me. Now it's up to me to make sure that I'm getting those minerals back into my water, and getting them into our food is very difficult because there's a lot of conversation walking around the idea that our soil is depleted, and we have in the modern news we're saying that farmers need to stop using the synthetic fertilizers. And I can sympathize with them so terribly because they were told to use the synthetic fertilizers back in, after World War II, when they had all those extra chemicals, and they were revamping their formula into something and like, oh, let's do fertilizer. So before that, we had the organic, we had the biodynamic, we had all of the minerals, all those kind of farming practices that now would be monoculture, and all that whole thing with things are just actually starving. We're all starving. So the vagus nerve is the aerial of God, and that invokes high vibes, bliss, inspiration, even just calmness, and just like that whole idea of being able to slow down. and we have the psychic flashes. We're having, you know, harmony in our life, and we can harmonize our internal life with our outer life. And it's transmuting, you know, certain things that are happening around us, and we're able to transmit those frequencies, so those around us can also feel that from us. And so that is something that, you know, I think we can identify that kind of story as in that, you know, the alchemy of the caterpillar to the butterfly. And in that stage when the caterpillar, it goes to that form when it's in the cocoon. And it's so wonderful to be able to see that stage. You actually see the minerals being drawn out and reflective are showing us. And you can see those cocoons that are like beautiful gold and shiny and silver and the iridescent greens and all those kinds of things. So that's what's happening, is that transformation from the caterpillar, which munches away on the ground, in the soil, and all those plants and all the stuff that's drawing the minerals from the soil. Then those minerals are being transformed into the butterfly. So we find that as like wondrous and like, wow, why is it just the butterfly? And well, there's lots of transformations that are happening with lots of other different species and organisms that are still connected to their divine, and they haven't like separated themselves from from source. So we tend to feel like it's just an anomaly, that it's not for us, but it looks different for us. So what it looks different, and it could look different in a couple of ways. We all have that family, you know, that family persona that was given to us by our parents and our siblings and our friends and our teachers and any of all those who are in our life and those stages. And it seems to be acceptable for a person to go through certain changes as long as it fits with the norm. So we're allowed to be, you know, an infant, a baby, a toddler. We're allowed to, you know, go into school and become tweens and teens, and then you're getting into the high school, and then you're getting of age for drinking and getting of age for voting. And, you know, those stages are all acceptable and familiar, because we, each and every one, are pretty much, you know, in a system where we're going to do this whether we like it or not. I like to say that when my kids were growing up, there were so many people that were, and I'm sure I felt it too, but I was really in love with the stage that was coming next. So I didn't have a lot of time or desire to look back too much and long for that stage that was gone. So the new stage is even good, and the next stage is really good. And I was really like content with the fact that this evolution is happening. And I think we need to be content with ourselves too. So a lot of times what's happening in, you know, when the caterpillar changes into the butterfly, they are still the caterpillar. They have just now added another level to themselves. And this perspective of the caterpillar is that of, you know, a little bit of a lower spectrum of sight and experience and such. But the butterfly goes away and can see new horizons. It can get closer to the sun. It can get up and above. And the butterfly has that whole new experience of bringing that all together, and the flight, and just being in the flow, and letting the wind carry, and just being their next best self. And they have that, and then they still have the fact that they were a caterpillar. So they can go back to those caterpillars that are still around, and they can still relate, they can still associate, but they can be an example of what happens when you eat the minerals and you eat the plant and you do all the things that the caterpillar was supposed to do. And then luckily enough, that happens to them. Like it's more of a trigger. Possibly we've dampened our natural triggers in the alchemy, and we think that alchemy is like turning lead to gold. But the caterpillar to the butterfly is also a certain mineral content alchemy, and also in the electrical field and the chemical field. So they're changing into this new form that's even, you know, better, because they have the both. They have and both, this and that, both. So when we can sympathize with those people that wonder who we are now, when we get to these people, and I see this a lot, and it causes a lot of grief, because they go through grief because sometimes they're shunned and bullied, and they just want to come back and hide themselves. And I understand that there's a lot of shyness that goes on with interacting with, you know, liking the video, sharing the videos, commenting on the video, and I completely am at ease with that. When I do these kinds of the content and the storytelling, it's not just one of, it's of the whole. And on a personal, on a more of a selfish level, I'm so thrilled to get this content out of my head, off these scrap pieces of paper, and into something that can be shared. And this whole communication with myself and going, I love that. This is my thing. It's very satisfying, and I love to do that. And I think there's a need for it. And so I don't mind the shyness. I don't mind the crickets. I don't mind that. And if I'm self-indulgent, and this is actually just to get it off my chest. And so when I learn about the minerals and such like that, I can tell you where I get my information. Off, I won't say it on the video, keeping it short, I hope, actually going over. But I just wanted to say, that whole thing that when a person comes out of their shell, it's not that they've just opened a special gift. And they have to understand that people are actually really attached to certainty, and they don't really like when something's uncertain. And you don't really want to tell them, hey, this is going to happen to you. Because it doesn't happen to them, because they have their own path. They can flutter their own wings in their own way. It doesn't mean that they all have to do public service. So it is an inheritance. It is our God-given inheritance to be able to do the transformation of the one phase into the second phase into the cocoon, and then into the third phase of actually doing the whole butterfly thing, and then reaching into that field of perspective that we can hear our God. And so the insights and the whole kind of synchronicities and all that language like that, you pay attention to that, because as soon as you connect the dots. But more than that, I really want to take care of ourselves physically, drink proper water, eat the proper vitamins, or through food, but that's not always easy to do that. So whatever way you can get, if you have to put them in pill form or what have you, or there's tissue salts, there's pink Himalayan salt, all those kinds of things, salts and minerals, especially if you're and exercising, you're sweating, you're perspiring. Replace those minerals. There are things called tissue salts and stuff like that, little pellets that go under your tongue. They're actually kind of sweet. So remember that we are caterpillars, we are the cocoon, and we are the butterfly, all wrapped into one. So thank you for sharing your time with me, and if you like this or any of the content or any of the storytelling, please share, subscribe, and if you're brave enough to be one of those people, drop a line and we'll have a conversation, or do it on the back channels with email or texting or iMessage and whatever. I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you. It just gets where you're kind of answering the same question over again, so it's better if I just kind of put it out, almost replicating myself, just to put that answer out. This was TED Talks, Ruby Rocks, and hopefully we talk some rocks that you will ingest your minerals. Thank you so much. See you again soon. Bye for now.